One other thing that needs to be proven on the football field is injuries being faked or not faked. How are they going to actually do that? Well, the NCAA has got some thoughts on how to overcome the fake injury, quote unquote, crisis that we're facing in college football. Jay and I have got our thoughts. We'll discuss coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks again for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Tune in and subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Injury fakes or feigns is becoming a bit of an issue in college football as teams employ more up-tempo offenses. Other teams, Ole Miss, are trying to figure out a way to slow those teams down. Well, the NCAA has had some thoughts, and the AFCA, the association, I don't know, it's a coaching association, we'll just say it that way, is trying to figure out the best way forward on that front. One suggestion that we've seen thrown out there is that potentially teams could be penalized a timeout if a player is believed to be faking an injury.
I don't know.
Don't love
because the question is, John, how do you prove that they're faking it? Right now, granted, a lot of the fake injuries that we've seen from these players is dang blatantly obvious. You get it, you add in a component where they could lose a timeout from it, they're going to get a little bit more sophisticated on these fakes. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, they're not fools. The coaches aren't fools. The ones that are doing it are not fools. They understand they're doing it because it's allowed, and they're doing it because everybody else is doing it. It's basically what it is. They're just falling in line with everybody else in the NCAA and college football, which is pretty ridiculous. But Lane Kiffin even pointed out, he's like, look, it's annoying, but at the same time, he's like, we got to do something about it. There needs to be something for it. So the timeout penalty, John, I think is dumb. Me personally, I've always said it. I've said it for years. Just make the kid have to sit the rest of the series. Now, they may bring in a backup player that they didn't want to play anyway, just to bring him in for the play, and then have him fake an injury after said play. Hopefully they don't give up a big play, but they may do that in order to try to slow down some tempo. Okay, that's a possibility. There are ways to get around it. But to me, make them sit a series. And that's going to make them have to make teams think about more and more about what players they have out there faking those injuries.
Yeah, the issue I have with this idea of officials trying to deduce who's faking an injury and who isn't is officials are already struggling with the aspects of the game that they have to operate, right?
Right.
Officiating seems like it's never been worse than it is right now. At any level, in any sport, you want to go youth football all the way to the NFL, officiating is struggling. It is struggling. The NBA, college basketball, high school, officials are struggling.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Don't put this responsibility in their hands. They can't even determine what's targeting and what's not. They can't determine what's a catch and what's not. We got to go to instant replay after every other scoring drive or every other big play almost because we can't figure it out on the field. And you're going to tell me that these officials who probably most likely don't have medical backgrounds. Now I know some might because officiating isn't their full-time gig, but you're going to tell me that they're going to be able to determine who's faking an injury because they've got these great assessment skills. Listen, I've been a nurse in the critical care area for 20 years. And I don't feel comfortable looking at a player dropping onto the ground and be like, yeah, he's faking. No, because listen, you start doing that and then, I don't know, to me, it creates a slippery slope of you accuse a player of faking an injury and if you do it and you're wrong,
in trouble,
then you could get yourself into trouble. Or again, you get players that are really injured, but you say, hey, nope, you're not injured. You got to get up and keep playing. Like, no, that isn't going to work, Jay. And I do think that keeping a guy off the field for a series, if he is dinged up, one, I think it promotes player safety, whether it's like a a contusion or a bruise or an ankle sprain or whatever, you give that player a little bit of time to rest. And then when they come back in for the next series, okay, maybe they're okay.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that's the way forward. I don't think having officials trying to determine who's faking and who's not is the best way to go about it. I like what one of the suggestions in this article that's from The Athletic says, like, if you got the green dot on your helmet, like usually the middle linebacker, your Danny Stutsmans or your quarterback on offense, those guys might be the exception to the rule because your starting quarterback's not going to fake an injury to come off the field. Your Danny Stutsmans aren't going to be faking an injury. Chris Paul, middle linebacker for Ole Miss, he wasn't going to be the one faking an injury to slow down the opposing offense. So, could coaches, try to use that? Coaches are always going to try and game the system. That's always going to be the case. But you take a guy like Danny Stutsman off the field, or a Chris Paul, or an Anthony Hill from Texas,
right?
That weakens your defense. So I don't know if that's going to be as much the case.
Yeah, and a lot of the key players, like you said, they're not the ones that are going to fake the injury. It's always someone like in the secondary, a backup, a linebacker that you can swap out quickly.
Rotational defensive tackle.
A defensive tackle. Defensive tackle is very common. They're usually the ones that just collapse randomly, like they got shot. Pow!
Yeah. Barely did anything on the play, and all of a sudden they're hurt.
All of a sudden they're hurt. So, but no, I think that it does make sense, though. To me, I still lean on the just make them sit for an entire series. And then it's going to be tough to be able to, because at a certain point, you're going to run out of rotational guys. Because you're going to want them in for certain plays. And that's what the rotational guys are for. You want them in for certain plays. And if they're running at tempo, boom, 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 you want certain defensive tackles out there to be able to handle it. And as they're getting tired, you want to be able to sub them out. If you do it, and that guy's not coming back in for the rest of the series, you better hope you can get them off the field quickly. That's usually the question. Can you get them off the field quick enough to where that doesn't cost you anything? And so to me, your best bet's 100% to just force them to sit. Just makes the most sense.
Any other rule changes you'd like to see in college football?
Man, look, John, you said it. You hit the nail on the head. These officials are already doing too much. And we're taking away a lot of the human aspects of sports in general because we've got so much technology and now we're trying to make sure we get the perfect call when all actually is not. The human element of the game is a part of the game. It's just, mistakes are going to be made. It's just, it's moving at certain speeds. But if there's one that targeting needs to be figured out, is it the hit going down? Is it the location of the hit? Like it always changes. Whenever, no, is it face mask to face mask? Is that considered targeting? I've seen that before. We need to figure out how targeting actually is and say if the crown of the helmet hits them, regardless of where it hits them, that's targeting. Just call it that and just simplify it instead of trying to figure out, well, he did kind of, but, he dropped it like a little late. No, did the crown hit, target. Call the penalty. And then you can determine if they're ejected or not. But I think that we need to figure out targeting because I have no clue what the heck targeting is.
I would love to see these conferences take a NHL approach to replay review. So the NHL, they've got an office up in Toronto that reviews, all of these major important situations. Like if there's a goal that they have a question about, that goes to Toronto. It's not decided by the guys on the ice, people in the building that are determining whether it's a goal, no goal. It goes to an independent group of replay officials up in Toronto, and it's a group of people looking at it, and they're determining on that replay if it's a goal or no goal. I would like to see the conferences employ something like this where, okay, you got an SEC office, and it's just full of people that are looking at replay. And if they see something, if they see a targeting, they can buzz the official on the field and be like, hey, we need to review this.
Yeah.
Or similar to what we see in the UFL now, they've got somebody in the booth that's looking at those plays and it's like, okay, yeah, that's a touchdown. We don't have to spend a commercial break looking at this replay review. Like streamline replay review, quit stopping down for every single play and quit making the official on the field be the one to have to come to the decision. Because listen, as much as we think that they're going to be independent on this, they're going to want to support their guys and they're going to want to support their calls because they're going to want their officiating crew to look good. And so take it away from them. Take it away from the officials on the field. Put it somewhere in the booth that isn't caught up in all of the emotion of the game and the emotion of the call. They're separated from it by hundreds to thousands of miles. And they're allowed to make a decision without all of the outside noise. They can just look at what's happened and quickly determine targeting, no targeting, touchdown, no touchdown, catch, no catch.
Current play is under review.
And then it goes to an office. 2 or 3 people look at it. It's a catch. Done. And we don't have to, sit there and watch that official looking at a computer screen smaller than my MacBook and trying to make this call. Absolutely idiotic that we've got the smallest TV available deciding national championship games or college football playoff games. What are we even doing? Go back to when we didn't have instant replay review. Let's just do that. Anyway, the Sooners stood out at the NFL Combine. Let's discuss that coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.